webinar on the Build America, Buy America 2025, What LPA Owners Need to Know, Manufactured Products Phase Out. This is Victoria Beal with the Ohio LTAP Center, and I'm very pleased to have colleagues Clint Bishop, Eric Kahlig, and Chase Wells for your presenters today on this webinar. A few housekeeping items, and then I'll be turning things over to Chase. The first thing is we do have a handout for you of the slides in the handout section of the GoToWebinar panel. If for some reason you can't download it, don't despair. We'll be following up with an email that'll have a link to that handout where you'll be able to download it from the LTAP webpage. The other thing is that we'll be taking questions in the question box in the GoToWebinar panel throughout the webinar, and the questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to put your questions in there though as we go, because we'll have time at the end to get those addressed for you. And last but not least, we are attempting to record the webinar. If we're successful, a link will be shared as well. If we're not, it's a good thing you're here. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Chase. Are you ready, Chase?
Thank you, Victoria. Welcome, everyone, to the BABA 2025 webinar. As Victoria said, my name is Chase Wells. I work in the Office of Construction Administration and Innovative Delivery for the Department of Transportation. And joining me today is Eric Kahlig, the administrator for the Office of Construction Admin and Innovative Delivery, as well as Clint Bishop, our construction contract staff specialist. And so today we will discuss the Build America, Buy America Act, also known as BABA, and its impacts on planning, design, and compliance for local public agencies. Hopefully this webinar will help you understand what it is you need to know to stay compliant and ensure your projects are successful. Obviously this is important to the industry. I'm looking at the attendees right now. We have over 450 attendees. So this is something that's been on the radar for the Ohio Department of Transportation, our contracting industry, and obviously our LPAs. And so hopefully after today's webinar, we can provide a little bit more clarity. So BABA was enacted under the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, aka the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill back in 2021. What it does is strengthen domestic sourcing requirements for infrastructure projects, which covers iron, steel, manufactured products, and construction materials. This means that for federally funded projects, these materials must be produced in the United States. So why do we need to care? LPAs need to care about BABA because it applies to federally funded infrastructure projects. If your project receives more than $500,000 in federal funds, it must comply with BABA provisions. This includes domestic sourcing requirements for iron, steel, manufactured products, and construction materials. Non-compliance can risk federal funding, so it is crucial to ensure all project phases, not just construction, meet these requirements. Through ongoing discussions with federal highways, they have made it clear that if an item of work is installed on a project which does not meet the BABA requirements, their default response to what we need to do with the item is to remove and replace. While there are always potential exceptions, this should not be expected if an item is installed which does not meet the requirements. Ultimately, federal funding could be removed in its entirety. BABA requirements for iron and steel, which has remained unchanged. For federally funded infrastructure projects, all iron and steel products must be produced in the United States. And this goes back for many decades. This includes processes such as melting, refining, forming, fabricating, and finishing. All these processes must occur domestically for the product to be compliant. This is not new and has been, like I said, a longstanding requirement and expectation for federally funded projects. Now, BABA expands further than just iron and steel. It now covers additional construction materials, including non-ferrous materials, plastic and polymer-based products, glass, lumber, drywall. BABA really defines construction materials broadly, and these materials must also be manufactured in the U.S. to comply with BABA requirements. So, for example, non-ferrous materials would be things like aluminum, copper, zinc, brass, lead, etc. Plastic and polymer-based products, not necessarily previously considered, could be PVC, HDPE pipe, geogrids, plastic rebar chairs, and plastic-based guardrail blocks. Looking at glass and lumber products, which could be used for pavement marking beads, permanent guardrail posts, and permanent wooden structures. If your project uses plastic pipes, glass panels, or drywalls, those materials must be fully manufactured in the United States from melting to coating. So construction materials that are excluded. Not all materials are considered construction materials under BABA. For example, cement and cementitious materials, aggregates and aggregate binding agents, or additives are excluded. While these seem a little counterintuitive, as concrete and stone is the epitome of a construction material, they do not require domestic sourcing. Materials like cement, fly ash, and slag are typically intermediate components used in the production of concrete or other manufactured products. Since BABA focuses on final construction materials, these inputs are not directly regulated through the rule. Requiring BABA compliance for bulk commodities like aggregates and cement would be extremely difficult to trace and certify due to their widespread and commingled sourcing. Ultimately, it has the potential to disrupt construction timelines and increase costs for public infrastructure projects, and offer limited benefits in terms of reshoring or domestic manufacturing, since these materials are widely produced in the United States. So some key dates for BABA implementation, which include the final FHW rule on October 23rd, 2023. This rule applies to all authorizations after this date. The federal authorization date for construction funds is a critical date to keep in mind. This date needs to be clearly noted in the contract. And talks with local programs moving forward, as we have the bid doc template and we supply such to the local public agency, we will have the construction federal authorization date in there for contractors to be aware of. So the initial waiver, when these laws were first implemented, there weren't enough US made manufactured products available. So Federal Highways issued a temporary waiver, and this waiver allowed foreign parts and even foreign assembly for manufactured products. That waiver now is being phased out, and we're moving toward full compliance. So the key implementation dates, one is coming up, fast approaching. The two major compliance thresholds take effect on October 1st, 2025. First being the final assembly requirement means that not only materials being sourced domestically, but the final product must be assembled in the United States. Moving on from this upcoming October 1st date, looking ahead to October 1st, 2026, 55% content rule takes effect, which is at least 55% of the total cost of components in a manufactured product come from the United States sources. These requirements will significantly impact procurement planning, especially for complex manufactured items like electronics, lighting, and signal systems. So let's look at an example regarding what final assembly truly means. So here, a highway project could include the installation of LED traffic signal heads. So before October 1st, 2025, these could be sourced from, say, a Canadian or Mexican manufacturer. However, after the date of October 1st, the final assembly of the LED signal heads must occur within the United States. This means the components can be sourced globally, but the final integration must be done in the United States. Here's another example, a highway project which includes the use of a pre-assembled pedestrian push-button system. Consider a product with components listed on the right-hand side of the slide, looking at aluminum housing, circuit board, and LED module. For this example, the LED module is not of domestic origin. We also have wiring harness, a mounting bracket, again, not of domestic origin as indicated in the slide. When you total up the full cost, it equates to $300, with $220 of that being US content, which then equates to 73%. So for this example, it does exceed the 55% domestic content requirement. For right now, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Clint Bishop, our contract staff specialist here in construction, to talk about de minimis waivers.
Thank you, Chase, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to cover de minimis waivers. They allow for a very small amount of foreign content to be included in the project. They must be documented and justified, so we need to have correspondence, invoices, plan sheets, shop drawings, supporting documentation of that material and its cost and its inclusion or not inclusion into the project. For iron and steel, if we have non-domestic iron or steel that does not exceed 0.1% of the project or $2,500, whichever is greater, that could be incorporated into the project. The cost is the value of the product as it's delivered to the project. Next slide. So for construction and materials and manufactured products, the waiver process is a little bit different and a little more cumbersome. If there's a non-compliant product that we want to add to the project, it cannot be more than the lesser of $1 million or 5% of the total applicable cost for the project. And the applicable costs are defined as the cost of materials, including the cost of any manufactured products used in the project that are subject to a domestic preference requirement. And these material costs have to be actual material cost, not anticipated material cost. Next slide. So, we just talked about two different thresholds there. You got to keep that in mind, that the threshold for iron and steel is different than the threshold for construction material and manufactured products. They're independent of each other with their own threshold, scope, and tracking requirements. Next slide. Let's take a look at the ODOT de minimis waiver form. It's a spreadsheet form, and there on the left side you can see the cover page. The contractor puts in some project information, and then there's a list of construction materials there, and they just click on the material they're looking for an exception form. In this instance, it's a plastic or polymer-based product. It's known as neoprene, and it's used to seal expansion joints in some structures or pavements. And on the right side, you can see the next tab in the spreadsheet. The contractor has typed in the material, the quantity of 88 feet, a unit cost of $19 per foot, and they're asking to put in a total of $1,672 of neoprene into the project. And then that carries down to the total cost there in the red circle of $1,672. And then we have to compare that against the threshold value. And we'll talk about that. Next slide. So to determine the threshold value, there's another tab in the spreadsheet where you can dump all your contract line items into that tab, like you see there on the right side of the page. And then just to the right of that, you'll start a new column for material cost. And you'll go down that list of line items and you'll fill in all the material costs that are subject to a Buy America preference. So you're looking at anything that's iron or steel, any of the manufactured product, and any of the construction materials we reviewed earlier. And you'll just do that line item by line item until you get to the bottom on the bottom right. Now I've shown it blown up there in the middle of the slide. So for this 4-lane resurfacing project, we went through and we have a total of $53,037 of material costs subject to Buy America. But the law says we have to take 5% of that total material cost to be our threshold. And so when we make the 5% calculation, it comes to $2,651.85. So once we've determined that, we'll go back a slide. Back a slide, please. Once we determine that, we put that value in the threshold there where the red, forward one slide, please. We'll put that dollar amount there where the red circle is and compare it. Back one slide, please. Right there, that's good. So we will compare that total cost of the neoprene to the threshold value. And in this instance, it's under the threshold value. So yes, the contractor can install that neoprene. And we would write it out formally in a letter to the project and the contractor. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Chase Wells, who will talk more about this requirement. Thank you, Chase.
Yeah, thank you, Clint. And obviously the process is slightly different between ODOT-led projects and local-led projects. The spreadsheet's going to look and feel the same, and it can be accessed, which we will provide you a link here at the end of the presentation. But if you simply Google the Ohio Department of Transportation, BABA construction, it will take you to a page that's maintained by Clint. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see there's waiver spreadsheets. One is signified as ODOT-led, the other is local-led. And the only difference really is the ODOT-led, you're able to carry over some AASHTO project information to make that spreadsheet a little easier to run. But with the local-led, it's simply probably going to be taking perhaps some bidding information in a spreadsheet format that you can, hopefully copy and paste over into the waiver spreadsheet in order to run. And when it comes time, the approval itself will come from the LPA yourself. And obviously, if you need any assistance, myself or the Office of Local Programs will be glad to assist. So with that, we will jump to the next slide here. Here's a list of known compliance challenges to be aware of. There are some items that we know of with limited or no known BABA compliant suppliers, such as LED vehicle and pedestrian signals, fiber optic termination panels, closed caption TV equipment. So it's important to be aware of these challenges and plan accordingly as you're designing your project. We do highly recommend that you incorporate a checkpoint in the plan development to consider these risks of these items and consider adding flexibility in your allowable materials to enable the widest listing of sources possible. Project segmentation. Can a project be separated into multiple projects and the separated project be funded solely with local funds and not be under the BABA requirements? And the answer is likely no, and that's for multiple reasons. Reading the CFR Part 184, the Buy America preferences for infrastructure projects. Here, this regulation issued by the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, implements the BABA provisions of the IIJA, which states the Buy America preference applies to all infrastructure projects receiving federal financial assistance, regardless of whether the federal funds are used for the entire project or only a portion of the project. So while NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, doesn't directly govern BABA, it does define how projects are scoped for environmental review. Federal highways and ODOT typically align the NEPA defined project boundaries with funding and compliance boundaries. Artificially segmenting a project to avoid federal requirements could be viewed as improper segmentation under NEPA, which is also prohibited. Segmentation may be allowed only if the segments are functional or functionally independent. There is no intent to circumvent federal requirements, and the segmentation is clearly documented and justified. And even then, FHWA may review the segmentation post-construction and reconsider. Also, just as a pro tip, we incorporated an artificial intelligence picture here on the right. So while you could probably see many things wrong with this picture as opposed to the MOT there on the left and cars heading toward one another, or a track hoe, what seems to be on a monorail, barrels aligned everywhere throughout the zone. This is just a fresh reminder to check your sources when using artificial intelligence, whether that be ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, what have you. But nonetheless, you get the idea. So action items for LPA owners. As an LPA owner, you do need to update your specifications, specifically ensuring Proposal Note 133 products produced in the United States, dated July 18th, 2025. That is the latest version of Proposal Note 133, ensuring that's in your contract. Also just coordinating with ODOT and tracking the material sourcing, which is vitally important. Please ensure you coordinate with ODOT and FHWA early on during project development to assist in identifying potential items of risk. Your construction monitors also in the districts will also play a key role in keeping you compliant. LPAs do need to take several actions to ensure compliance with BABA. As I said, update the specifications in your procurement language, check for BABA issues during scope development, say, for example, a stage 3 check of your plans. Ensure the federal authorization date is in fact in the proposal. This is the contractual piece that lets the contractors know what specification governs. And then also discuss BABA at your pre-bid meetings, pre-construction meetings, progress meetings, really any touch point that you have with the contractor. And then lastly, obviously detail any compliance or issues in the daily work reports. And then last, also coordinate with ODOT and FHWA early on during the project development. Kind of said this earlier, track materials and waivers, keep records of all those waivers. Communication to bidders, again, is vitally crucial with the construction federal authorization date being a key date of interest. Again, still on action items for LPA owners. During development of plans, owners should do a risk assessment of available suppliers and potentially change the plans to ensure actual suppliers exist. This may be a problem. However, this must be a consideration. A previous preferred supplier may not necessarily be an option moving forward. So ensure these BABA requirements are discussed at every potential contractor touchpoint meeting. Discuss BABA compliance, again, during pre-bid, pre-construction progress meetings to ensure that the contractors are aware and how serious we are taking this. So probably the biggest question that you all have is documenting Buy America compliance. To prove compliance with Buy America, documentation must be thorough and traceable. This includes origin certifications from suppliers, delivery tickets showing batch numbers and sources, and test results for materials like steel. Daily diaries should note where and how materials were used, and most importantly, signed Buy America certificates must be included in the project file. For example, if you're using rebar, you'll need mill test reports showing it was melted and manufactured in the United States. And for every material, your inspector's daily diary should match what was delivered and installed. Many have asked what is required documentation that Federal Highways requires, but in actuality, there is no single certification form or format. FHWA, while not necessarily giving exact requirements, of the necessary for proof, they do want to see a reasonable proof of domestic origin. So what's important is no matter the format of the documentation, please get it prior to incorporating and not after. It will eliminate a lot of questions. Here, just to provide some examples of proof of Buy America compliance from contractors. The one on the left from Potters is regarding glass beads, and it says here, based on the current guidance issued by the United States Department of Transportation, we believe our products constitute construction materials under the Act and can conform that our products satisfy the relevant requirements of BABA, which would be an acceptable form from the manufacturer. On the right, we have Ennis Flint from PPG regarding traffic paint. And here you can see highlighted in yellow, we confirm that products meet the applicable standards under BABA as a date of this letter. So these are good examples of what would be expected to be in the project folder to indeed certify that the materials are BABA compliant. So some common question and answers that we have fielded and feel that you might have here on this webinar today, beginning with what is a manufactured product, just to kind of recap of what we went through so far this afternoon. A manufactured product is a product made from multiple parts assembled into a finished item, like a light pole, traffic signal, or electrical cabinet. Another question, what does final assembly in the United States actually mean? So the last step of putting the product together must happen in the United States, even if some parts are from other countries. Another question here would be, would putting all the foreign parts together on site of the project meet the intent of final assembly? We have a little bit of a lengthy answer here, so bear with me, but it's important. So it does depend. If the on-site work is simple, installation like bolting things together, such as pre-assembled parts, it would not qualify. What needs to happen is for it to be a true final assembly process where the product is actually fully built and made functionally from its material components on site, which then may qualify for final assembly, but only if it's substantial and not just fitting or wiring, and that the product is not functional until this step is completed. So that's important. There's a little bit of gray area there, but I think the key component here is that it is substantial. Another potential question would be, why aren't we discussing construction materials following the 55% rule like we've already discussed with the manufactured products? And the answer here is that construction materials are typically single substance items like a sheet of glass or a piece of lumber. They don't have parts, much like a manufactured product, to add up. So instead of tracking percentages, the rule is simple. For every step of making the material, it just must happen in the United States. Manufactured products, on the other hand, are made from many parts. So the 55% rule ensures that most of the value does come from United States sources. So the question is, how do I know if a product truly meets the rules? And the answer is the contractors should provide certification or documentation. You don't need to calculate it. You simply need to verify the paperwork. I'm going to cross something out here, and that's the should. Sorry, this should say shall. The contractor shall provide certification or documentation. That is the expectation. Next question, can I use a product with a final assembly outside of the US after October 1st, 2025? And the answer is possibly, but it then goes back to that federal authorization date. So if the project was federally authorized for construction before October 1st, 2025, then yes, final assembly could occur outside of the United States. But anything after October 1st, 2025 must be assembled within the United States. Next question, why aren't cement, aggregates, and additives required to follow Buy America rules? We did touch on this briefly earlier, but to reiterate, these materials are explicitly excluded from BABA's construction material requirements, under section 70917 of the IIJA for these practical reasons. These materials are widely used, often regionally sourced, and not easily traceable through the complex supply chains. Requiring full domestic sourcing of things like sand, gravel, or cement powder would likely delay projects and increase costs without significantly boosting U.S. manufacturing. And with that, here's some points of contact from the presentation today. Myself, Chase Wells, and Clint Bishop. Also a good resource for all things BABA is the Office of Local Programs, beginning with Jeff Payton. And then I do want to share on the next slide some links. The Buy America Construction Program Guide. Again, this was the link that the Office of Construction Administration and Innovative Delivery maintains that gives you kind of a one-stop shop for BABA requirements. And then there's also the Q&As that exist with federal highways for the waiver of Buy America. And before I end the presentation and we field some questions, I want to hand it back over to Clint or Eric if there's anything you all wanted to say that perhaps I missed or needed further clarification on.
The only thing we will add is we recognize that this could be problems. It could cause some difficulties for us. We do want to make sure that people understand that we do try to keep a listing of items for what we call QPL or approved items like the TAP list and things like that that probably a lot of the LPAs are familiar with. We are attempting to do our best to keep that up to date, identifying which products meet the Buy America requirements, so you are aware. Chase had mentioned that there was a long listing of items that there are problems or there could be potential issues that we know of, and that is based off of our current specifications and our requirements. Obviously differing LPAs and differing contracting organizations may require other sources or other materials. So that list isn't intended to be a catch-all, know-all kind of list. We just wanted the group to be aware and everybody on here that these are the things that we are currently struggling with. Most of the items, when Chase had it listing on there, is we do have at least one source. I think there is one underpass lighting specific type that doesn't meet. However, that does give a couple of the people that are on our list some advantage. But that's where we're at, and hopefully it does expand. I do want to say that the Buy America requirements are, it's important. It is intended to expand U.S. manufacturing, and because of that, it is not expected to go away. It is I'll just say it, it's a bipartisan effort from both. It was initiated under one party and it's being followed through with another. So we do expect it to continue. But we do want to, these changes that are coming up and are coming quick. They are always, like Jason said, they always were in play. They always were in the law. But the October 1st phase out, the first stage, and then the subsequent one in 26. It is just it's a phasing out of what was initially a waiver. So hopefully these things aren't new to everybody, but we just thought it was important to share what we do know and our approaches that we're taking to these items with the LPA community. And we're here to help. We're here to help out where we can and try to help with any guidance as much as possible.
Thanks, Eric. And one of the things I failed to mention earlier was, if you're an LPA, I'm sure you're familiar with our project bill of materials spreadsheet and the way we track our materials. Again, just to further help locals, we've updated that spreadsheet and we'll be releasing it soon. But what it does is add a column to the materials signifying whether or not that material is needs to be BABA checked, or if which obviously if it denotes it as a yes, then we would expect some documentation, but at least from that spreadsheet, you'll be able to tell what all materials on your project do need to be checked, which will just, again, help us stay in compliance. So with that, I will get over to the questions. Should there be any in the chat session, Victoria?
Oh, you've got quite a few.
Yeah.
So I'll just start at the top and start reading down. First one, do steel submittals need to meet BABA requirements or just manufactured in the USA?
Steel submittals do definitely need to meet BABA requirements. I do want to reiterate that the Buy America requirement for steel is not new at all by any means. So yes, they do. There has been some discussion on how do I say it? That the melting process makes them into a manufactured product, but that it doesn't. They are still an iron and steel, and specifically on stainless steel type items. We see that as it is a steel item. It is required, and yes, they do need to meet the requirements. And actually, they've been in play before any of the other waivers phase out timeframes. So yes, in short.
Okay, they did follow up with a comment stating that Caltrans specs only call out that steel and iron materials must be melted and manufactured in the United States. They don't specifically call out the BABA compliance for steel.
Okay, cannot attempt to speak to Caltrans, but I know that's where we're currently at with in Ohio.
All right, next question. Would the zinc for galvanization be considered a BABA material?
Yes.
That was easy enough. Can you please guide them on the process of submitting the waiver and requirements?
Clint, are you still on the line? I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, so you know, at the DOT here at ODOT, the contractor would probably make some sort of a formal and informal request to the project engineer. They would then download the Excel exception form for de minimis and start to work with the contractor to fill that out. It can be a little bit of an exercise to go through all the materials and try to get the material cost, but just be aware that every contractor has that in their bidding software, along with their labor costs and markup and overhead and everything else. So it's not a big stretch for them to pull that cost out and start putting it into the spreadsheet and eventually get to a point where you find out if you're over or under the threshold to be able to put something non-compliant in the project.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate here. The spreadsheets, when you pull them up side by side between the ODOT let and the local let, they look and feel the same. Really the only problem, or not problem, the only difference is the ODOT let is more easily, you're able to copy and paste information from ASH to our project, as all ODOT let projects are in ASH to our project. You will have to take a little bit of step from the local perspective and finding that information to include for, I know it's small print, but here on the right, when you're looking at the work item and the description, the bid unit cost and that stuff. And then also at the bottom of the page, the real difference is who's accepting it. For ODOT, it's coming here and it's getting routed through Clint. When it's a local let project, that's going to be routed through the LPA owner themselves. Obviously, we want to be made aware of it. We'll help the owner in any way that we can to make sure that everything's compliant. But really that letter back to the contractor for an LPA project will come from the LPA themselves.
Okay, ready for the next question?
Yep.
All right, this person had two questions. The first one is, how would you assist contractors to meet compliance with BABA requirements as a design QA/QC engineer, especially for plumbing submittals with such minimal amounts for steel and components such as plumbing materials?
Read that one more time, if you would, Victoria. That was a
Sure.
long one. I didn't do my
Yeah.
notes. I didn't take very good.
All right. It says, how would you assist contractors in meeting the compliance with BABA requirements as a design QA/QC engineer, especially for plumbing submittals with such minimal amounts for steel and components such as plumbing materials?
Well, one thing I will say is you got to remember with plumbing materials, I'm assuming, well, a lot of them, I'm assuming a building or something like that, it would have typically a PVC or plastic base, but those dudes still need to meet by America requirements. I'm assuming when they're saying a QC QA engineer, I'm assuming they're talking about basically the field inspection engineer. I would help guide them to basically our boy, for PVC or plastic. I don't know. I mean, we don't have a lot of listing of those type of items. We don't maintain necessarily an approved list for plumbing items. That would be difficult. What I would say is they will have to reach out to their typical suppliers and whoever they would have supplying materials, and prior to bidding or even during construction, I guess, if it's after the fact, um, asking them to see where they source their materials from, help guide them to any other sources that you know of that may meet Buy America requirements. That is a difficult question because this is a difficult topic just in general. That's about the best I could say. Is basically we could help guide to our list that we do have for the type of materials, even though plumbing items, well, that is not a specialty of ODOT. So I just, it's hard, it's difficult. Try to use all your sources that you possibly can to identify any possible suppliers and reach out to them. Hopefully during the design process, that is, like Chase had said, that was a checkpoint that was considered during the development of the plans, and maybe even potentially the attempt to design around or identify sources early in the development to make sure that there is an available source. It's difficult. That's about the best we can offer.
Okay,
I would
next question.
add that
Sorry.
no, it's okay, Victoria. While it's not common practice, at least from an ODOT perspective, when we have complex projects, we have invited contractors in before, prior to advertising. And that could be a new methodology for locals to adopt as well, to say, hey, look, this is the direction we're going. What are some potential pitfalls when it comes to materials, and what are those lead times, and what is their BABA compliance? So it's something to consider. Like I said, we don't do it a lot, but we have done it before, inviting contractors in and getting their input before we officially advertise a project.
Okay, second question. Do you measure the percentage amount of BABA domestic content or materials in a state federally funded project as a total, or by the sum of the percent of each component? How would you estimate those components as they are verified by the contractor throughout the construction life cycle of the project?
I would say the sum of the individual components. If you look at the threshold for steel, you know, it's 0.1% of the cost of the project. And you only have up until that threshold to cover any non-domestic steel that you need to bring into the project. It's not for every time you run it. It's a total, and if the total amount of non-domestic steel hits that threshold, then you can't put any more in.
Okay, next question, we're back to zinc. How about zinc in the galvanizing process for structural beams? Zinc may not be mined and produced in the US. Can hot dipped be specified since zinc is the main ingredient in coating?
Well, for steel, you know, all the melting, coating, manufacturing has to take place in the US. And I'm pretty sure that, you know, when it gets coated with zinc, it's going to have to be compliant with BABA. I don't think we're going to be able to use zinc from another country or send the beams out to another country to get zinc plated. I think that's going to be domestically required.
Next question, for manufactured items like the pedestrian button just presented, will ODOT be syncing their qualified products list, QPL, or labeling them in any way to correspond with actual products that meet the Build America, Buy America requirement?
Currently, excuse me, currently right now, the listing, we have been updating for items that we know that meet BABA. We're going to try to continue to improve that listing. There are some errors in it, unfortunately. But yeah, the listing we are putting out there, we have been identifying the Buy America compliant items. Now, what we're not necessarily doing, and I need to check on this, is basically saying if it meets the October 1st, 25 and October 26 dates. But however, we are posting that out on our QPL items. That's why we know that some of the items that we have that we listed, that we knew we had potential issues or problems, as there might have been only one supplier. We are trying to do an attempt to identify them. I will say the reason why people may ask, well, almost all projects are federally funded. And so why would you put any suppliers on your list that aren't or don't meet Buy America? The reason is we still have a lot of projects that are not federally funded. So the October 1st, now still iron and steel is still required as that's in a specification, the DOT specification. But the other manufactured and the 55%, those type of items and actually some of the other manufactured portions do not apply to a state-funded project, state-funded only project. But iron and steel, there is still requirements.
All right, temporary fabric for, say, a construction entrance paid under a CLN with federal funds. Is BABA required?
If it's temporary? No. Temporary items are exempt.
When is the contractor required to submit the exception form?
As soon as possible, when they know of something that they could have a compliance issue with.
For material cost in de minimis example, those costs are invoiced costs, including transportation to the job, correct? Backed up by actual invoices provided by the contractor?
We do ask for invoices for the non-domestic steel or non-domestic materials to substantiate that unit price. It's the material costs only that I know of. I don't know that we would include transportation fees or tariffs or taxes or anything like that in that material cost. It'd be just the material cost.
Is there a new Buy America form starting October 1st, 2025? And if so, could they please be provided with a copy?
The current PN 133 specification that was published in July has the October cutoffs in it. We knew about them ahead of time. There is no form that's going to be printed on October 1st of this year. It's been printed dated July of 2025.
Is the initial phase out occurring October 1st based on federal authorization of a project? So only projects federally authorized after October 1st have the final assembly requirements added?
Yes, but I'm going to throw a caveat in there is for construction authorization. So a project may have been started a while back, let's say under the engineering phases that might have used federal funds, and the project might have been going on, but it's the construction authorization, federal construction authorization date is what's key on the BABA waiver phase out dates. So essentially, if it's October 2nd, which it won't happen because of federal shutdown, but if it was October 2nd, it would apply October 2nd of 25, you're in. If it is September 30th, then no.
Will ODOT be determining the domestic percent of products before placing them on the QPL, et cetera?
What we are doing, or what we do, and I'll just let you know how it works, is when they become re-up onto the QPL listing, they must state if they do meet the BABA requirements, and we are going to formally, we intend to have a formal certification that they must submit when they become and re-up for the QPL and the TAP list. So we will be doing that, and it will be listed. Now, it is still the responsibility of the project management of the construction project I'm talking. You should still receive, and I highly recommend receiving that letter that comes from a manufacturer or some other reasonable, I don't know if you can say definitive, but some other reasonable demonstration that they do meet the requirements of Buy America.
For a plastic part, do you have to document where the material came from that the part is made of? And if it is recycled, do you have to document where the recycled content originated from?
Wow.
Well, for recycled things, we've run into issues with aluminum. Sometimes fence items are made from recycled aluminum, and if the contractor cannot prove that recycled aluminum was sourced domestically, then we're treating it as a non-domestic product, and we would not incorporate it into the project. So I can speak to that. I don't know if Eric, were you going to add something for the first part of that?
Well, I'm going to give an opinion on when it comes to plastics. Pretty hard to tell in the pipeline if the oil's coming from Texas or if it's coming from Saudi Arabia. It is at that point, because of that difficulty, it is basically the creation of the plastic itself from that raw material is how I would interpret it, because it's pretty hard to track the pipeline back. And I'm thinking that's probably where the question was coming from. In my opinion, on a recycled material, if we can't tell that it was done for plastic in the US, it would be a problem then.
Does a Made in America stamp on a submittal satisfy BABA documentation?
That has been a discussion point. I would think so. However, I'm going to throw a caveat in there that I would attempt to get more of a definitive proof from my manufacturer. That is reasonable to assume, but boy, I wouldn't want to chance it if we don't take steps to try to further get evidence.
Do non-ferrous materials such as copper and lead require mill certificates like iron or steel?
I don't believe they require a mill certificate. However, I would want some evidence of where they were manufactured from. I don't think so. Clint, do you got anything on like copper? I wouldn't think so.
No, we would probably need a a certificate or certified test data on something like that from the prime contractor.
For aluminum parts, does the raw material have to originate from the US for mining through melting and forming?
I would say yes, just like the requirement for steel.
Are DSRs acceptable paperwork?
Very good question. As of right now, no. We are asking that you still receive documentation, not only from the, even though the DSR does show it comes from a daily source report, it does come from one of the identified, likely one of the identified and manufacturers. Currently, our stance is we should still receive that certification from the manufacturer. We are looking into it. We are considering changing that stance a little bit, but as of right now, for everybody to be safe, I would still try to get additional documentation.
If a product has less than 500,000 of federal assistance, the BABA construction materials and manufacturers products don't apply, but iron and steel will still count, correct?
That is correct. If you have less than $500,000 federal participation, the federal Buy America standards do not apply. But if you have, state or local construction, the Ohio Revised Code requires domestically made steel that's used for structural purposes. So even though there's no federal money in the project and there's only state and local money, the Ohio Revised Code has very similar requirements for iron and steel.
Is there still an exemption for items unavailable in the USA?
No, and that is why we're having this discussion. That is the waiver process that is being phased out.
Would it be possible for the LPA project bill of materials to be combined with the BABA list to call out BABA items for locals?
Yes, that's the intent. The data that we mine from Ashdoor project to signify whether or not a material is BABA is essentially included with the standard bill of materials that helps comprise the project bill of materials.
If product on the TAP list for BABA, do you still need the certification from the contractor?
Currently, like I said, it's kind of goes the same lines, the DSR and also the QPL. We are looking into a potential change or considering if we document if we document that the manufacturer, who the manufacturer is, and if the manufacturer is on the TAP list, and we keep that certification, we are looking into potentially saying, yes, it's acceptable. However, that's only we're considering it. As of right now, again, I would, if at all possible, get some more definitive evidence of where it was sourced or manufactured.
In the example of known compliance challenges, what should be done for projects that are almost exclusively these traffic items? Waivers submitted for every PID? And who handles the waiver submission, ODOT, district, or local?
So the ones that we did list, I just wanted to make clear, we identified them as potential problem items as there may only be a single manufacturer. There are manufacturers for most of these items, if not all of them, at least for the ones that are on there because of ODOT specifications. There are a few that are problematic. Like I said, one of them is an LED underpass lighting that was specific to a certain type of structure that we do not know that there's anything coming. So so hopefully there are manufacturers for most of these things, if not all of them now, except for one or two. So the handling of the waiver request would be initially start from the contractor and then would come up and for an LPA and would come up to the LPA managing the project. So, but reach out. We are always here to help. Yeah, we're from the government. We're here to help. I know that's an old joke. But we'll be here, try to help guide it. Clint knows the waiver process. Chase knows how that's going to be incorporated in with an LPA project. And also your LPA coordinators in the district will help and assist, but it should come up through, and it's ultimately the LPA that owns the contract is the one that would ultimately be the acceptance of the waiver.
I want to thank you, gentlemen, for answering the questions I was able to ask in the time that we have available. I know that we still have quite a few questions in the list here, and I want to assure everyone who asked a question that I'll be providing these over to our presenters, and they'll be reaching out to hopefully help get this addressed for you. So thank you for being on the webinar today. We will be following up with hopefully a link to the recording, definitely a link to the handout, and please look for your certificate of participation within a week. So thank you everyone for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks.